Are you looking for a space where you will learn to improve your mental strength, emotional health, and heal your insecurities from the inside out? Take the first step to living a more meaningful life with the Better Me with Body by Bree podcast. I'm your host, Bree. I'm a certified personal trainer, entrepreneur, and mother of 3. I've helped empower thousands of women to take action through fitness, nutrition, meditation, personal development, and aligning thoughts with action. This podcast is for those who are ready to feel inspired and motivated to live a more purposeful life. Let's grow together. Welcome to the Better Me podcast. Today's episode is very near and dear to my heart because one of my idols, Ralphie from Simply on Purpose, is joining us today. Ralphie founded Simply on Purpose in 2017, where she shares a life-changing parenting truths. She now speaks around the world for workshops educating parents on how to connect with their children in a positive way. I've already learned so much from her in her courses, and I can't wait to share her knowledge with you. Let's get started. I'm so excited because today we have one of my idols. I have been following her for so long, Ralphie from Simply on Purpose, and she helps moms learn tools to have amazing relationships with their children. Ralphie, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. How are you, Bree?
I'm doing great. I'm so grateful you're here. You are such a busy lady. I know that you speak around the world teaching women. You have all of these online courses and audio courses and your Instagram. You're just such a boss. I look up to you so much. So I'm so grateful that you are taking the time to teach all of my followers and all of the moms listening because I feel like we need it right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for giving me this purpose.
So I feel as I was thinking of what we need right now, I was talking to my friends and I'm like, is anybody else kind of losing it? Like we're a year into quarantine. We're trying to homeschool our children. Some of us might be working at the same time. And I was just talking about how I feel like my patience has completely run out. And sometimes you just feel like the worst mom because it's not their fault, but you just are so overwhelmed. And I wanted to talk about one of your challenges that you have created, and it's called the No Yell Challenge. Would you mind teaching our listeners a little bit more about it?
Yeah. So the No Yell Challenge is on Instagram, and it's when I challenge parents to not raise their voices in a demeaning way towards their children for a short period of time. It's usually 3 days. And of course, we don't focus on perfection. We talk a lot about progress. It's usually done a couple times a year, but so many followers hold their own no yells whenever they need to. I have lots of saved resources for them to be able to do that. And it's just been so successful because learning to control yourself and to separate your story from your child's story is really the prerequisite to all other parenting skills. It's like a major struggle for parents to feel like they're not standing at the sidelines helpless and that their children are romping all over them. Like you said, it's really important for them to feel like they have some power and some control over the situation. And that's the truth, is actually that we do have the greatest power to change our homes. The key is just managing ourselves. And if parents aren't in control of themselves, then there really is no control over the home. And that's the greatest and biggest hurdle for parents, is not a child's emotions. It's really our emotions. That's why it's called parenting, actually, is because it's about parent behavior. It's not called childrening. Yeah, it's not called childrening.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Can you talk a little more about how you said changing your story, changing your story and how you react?
Yeah, so there's 2 stories that are going on, at least 2, right? Between 2 people, there's either a child story or there's a parent story. And a lot of times we're not listening to theirs. We're not listening to the fact that they just can't tie their shoes or they really want the pink cup. Yeah, we just aren't listening to that. And so, and sometimes we push down our story onto our child and we say, we start to take things personal and we assign adult meaning to what's going on rather than just saying, well, she's just frustrated because somebody took her toy away. We say, that's so embarrassing. You're embarrassing me by pushing that person over. And you know that's not the right thing to do. And I've taught you moral character before and blah, 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 blah. So you can see how in our mind, in our adult thinking, we start to push down our story onto our child. And then it becomes this big, blown out scenario where it just really didn't need to be that way at all. And so I talk a lot about that ability of listening to the right story and making sure that you're able to protect your child from your story. And a lot of the past emotions that we have that aren't resolved, that we're often listening to our inner child, like nobody respects me, nobody listens to me, nobody cares about me, or I'm the servant, or, everything has to go well, or I'm a failure. Whatever story it is that we're telling ourselves, that we're protecting our child from that and respecting our own at the same time. I think that we can do that at the same time.
So how would somebody, if they do have that story, how do they overcome it so that it doesn't manifest to our children?
So we can change our negative thought pattern. We use what's called a starting ritual. And sometimes a starting ritual just means that we say something to ourselves. Like we'll say, it's okay for him to be 3, or she's trying so hard, or it's really my job to stay safe and it's her job to be a child. That's a really great starting ritual. Or we can do things where we physically move our body. We can put our hand on our heart to remember to always show unconditional love, or put our hand on our head to remember, okay, what am I thinking about right now? And should I be thinking about his story or my story? Or get down at the child's level. That's actually one of the best ways to avoid yelling, is when you get down at a child's eye level, or even lower than the child is even better, because then we're sending a message to ourselves and to them that I am a safe teacher, that I am one that you can be with and I can communicate with you. And there's connection here, and I'm seeking for connection over power. It's a really important that. Yeah, it's a really important thing to realize.
That. Yes, I've implemented that a ton with my children after you taught that. And I've been following you for so long. And now when I want them to do something, I get down on their level, I look in their eyes, and I talk them through it. And it's been night and day in my house, just like their Well, also I feel like kids they're always distracted. So, you have to tell them 10 times, put your shoes on, put your shoes on, put your shoes on. But if I get down on their level, look in their eyes, and I'm like, hey, bud, do you think you could go get your shoes on? Then he's like, sure. And he'll go do it. So it's been such a great tool in our house to even just help not repeating yourself.
Yeah, because you're sending a message that what's important to them is important to you, that you can see things through their point of view, and that you are willing to communicate in the way that they communicate. It's just kind of again, seeking connection over power. And you're saying, my attachment to you, my secure attachment to you is more important than the timeline or my agenda. So I can slow down and get down at your level.
It's hard because a lot of times you do forget, like, they are their own little people with their own little emotions. And sometimes as parents, we're like, I told you to do this. Why aren't you doing it? And you kind of feel like they should be little robots that just listen all the time, and they're not. And I love that you put that perspective. What is their story? Like, are they tired? Are they hungry? Are they frustrated? What are they feeling? And putting yourself in their shoes. That has helped me a lot with my daughter. Even I've noticed that she will come home from school and be really give me a lot of attitude. And I'm like, you know what? Once I put myself in her shoes, she's going back to school for 8 hours a day, and that's exhausting. And she's probably just emotionally exhausted. Then it helped me to parent her with a little more love instead of feeling like you said, take it personal. Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And also when they come home is the safe place for them to be human. It's a safe place for them to drop the act and to be vulnerable and to fight with their siblings and to express themselves in a whiny way, or it just is this environment for them to be able to do those things. And we, instead of being super frustrated and angry, they're like, why, they're so good for their teacher. Why can't they be good for me? Give yourself a pat on the back and say, this is a symptom of me being a safe parent. And it's an honor.
That way, because that's true. Jameson, I have a 4-year-old, and every teacher is like, we love Jameson. He's the most well-behaved, like, little boy. He's just such a sweetheart. And then he comes home and he's like a terror, and he's like crazy, and he's just throwing tantrums. And I'm like, that's funny. I've always thought that, like, is it he's so well-behaved at school that he like needs to let it out? Like, yeah. I've never thought of it that way. So how do you, I guess for me, because I've really taken this no yell challenge to heart, because I grew up in a yelling family. Like, we were loving, we're just very loud. We're very passionate people, and we're very loud, and we yell all the time for everything. And so it's a reaction for me. Like, it's just an easy reaction for me to yell. And so I really wanted to change that in my house. And so I noticed I did your no yell challenge for 3 days, and Adam was like, I don't know what happened, but the energy in our house has completely changed. And it was all just because I stopped yelling. And so I am such a believer in your no yell challenge. And I'm curious what your thoughts are with and I know you do consult calls too. So Ralphie does like consult calls for people. She does seminars. She does conferences. She has all these audio courses. Like, you can learn so much from Ralphie. So I'm trying to get some real life experience tips from you that maybe our listeners can help. It might help them. But I've noticed, like, it's hard for me to find the balance of being a loving parent that's very patient, but then also, like, where do you draw the line where you're like, okay, it's not okay to like throw tantrums and, hit and like lay on the floor and scream while we're trying to eat dinner. Like, how do you handle those situations?
Such a good question. I think that this is a really common question, because the pendulum is swinging so much farther over to like the gentle parenting, peaceful parenting side. And parents are afraid to hold boundaries because of that. Like, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be firm. That's not being kind. That's not being peaceful or gentle. And the opposite is true. What children need and desperately long for are limits. They want them. They thrive on them. And I know that sounds really counterintuitive, but if you can imagine a ball and just throwing it, and it just has no wall to hit, it has no boundaries, it has no sense of self. It doesn't know what it can do and what it can't do, because there's no wall for it to hit itself up against. When you hold a boundary for a child, it's the kind thing to do, because it teaches the child, you are responsible for your own behavior, and I am responsible for my behavior. And this is where you end and I begin. And it helps them to learn more self-control and to learn how to, all of the good things, their ability to manage themselves and to learn more about what they can and they can't do. I think that it's essential for parents to remember that they need to be the fearless leader, or the captain of the ship, or the North Star, or whatever you want to call it. It's important for them to be the gentle authority in your home and to hold the boundary. So if, for example, you mentioned like tantrums or kicking or whatever, I think that we struggle with it because when our children are in distress, there's this alarm going off, right? Like, oh, something is wrong and I need to fix it and things need to get better. And it's got to stop. It's got to stop right now. And that's what gets in the way. when we understand there's really like no control over the tantrum, and that we choose to be in control of the only thing that we can be in control of ourselves, we can stay calm and move through that and allow and just accept what's happening rather than trying to get it to stop. So tantrums are one of those things where we don't really need to hold a boundary unless they're hurting other people or they're hurting themselves. And that's a really important boundary to always hold, is that you are the person that makes sure that things are safe, that you're safe, that other children are safe, that they are safe with themselves, they're safe with objects. And so you can say things like, I hear that you're upset and I'm so sorry that you feel that way, but I need to keep you safe. So I'm going to move you carefully over to this area so that you can be safe. Or I know that that made you really upset and I understand, but I cannot allow you to hit her. I have to make sure that she is safe. That's my job. And for me to keep you safe too. So holding those really strong boundaries is really important. But tantrums are kind of a unique beast in themselves, where we want to fix them and they just aren't fixable. It's just a part of development. And I think that if we kind of change our perspective on that, we just think, oh, this is normal and natural and healthy, then we'll stop hating them so much.
Yeah, it's so hard. So do you ever give consequences? Like, do you ever say, it's not like with Jameson, for example, he yells at me, like he screams, like he's very passionate, he's like a sensitive child. And so he feels very deeply. And so if he has his feelings hurt or he's angry or he's tired or he's hungry, it's screaming. And so I'm trying to teach him, like, we have to talk softly, but it doesn't matter what I say. He just keeps screaming and screaming. So do you ever give consequences like, this is not okay, like you're going to have, or do you just say like, you know, go to another room and like, if you want to scream, you can scream in your room? Like, how do you handle those situations?
Well, how old is Jameson?
He's 4.
Yeah, that always matters. So people will give me a problem and I always have to ask how old they are, because usually they are young.
For sure. Still trying to like manage his own anger.
Yeah. Well, and that's the truth, is that young children they have very little impulse control or executive function. That it's very difficult for them to be in control of themselves. And I think that because we project a better self onto our children. So think about that for a minute. You're projecting your better self, a self that you haven't realized yet, onto your child. Like, you need to think about what you're saying. You need to be in control of yourself. You need to stop yelling and kicking when things don't go your way. You need to let people tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Like, we have a hard time with that. That's like impossible for us to do, but we project it onto ourselves. Like, you're a child and I'm the boss and you need to be listening and be compliant, because, yeah, I don't know why. I think that we want them to be little robots because we want to be in control of the things that we own or the things that we have. And
that's true.
And we cannot be in control of that. So because we're not in control of it, we feel bruised and beaten by small children that we've dedicated our lives to. You know, how can they do that? How can they yell and scream at me? What we need to think about more so is, instead of how to punish, is how can I better teach? I think that's a big shift.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. How can I make this child stop by adding pain to their life and making them miserable in some way so that they are aversive to the thing and that it's fear driven? Versus the other side is, how can I better teach my child to learn to love, to behave well? What things do I need to be better at being an effective teacher? And of course, yes, like, consequences are wonderful. Natural consequences are wonderful. And I think the biggest hurdle there is that parents struggle with stepping out of the way to allow natural consequences to happen. Like, oh, they forgot their coat, or they won't wear their coat, they're going to freeze, so I'll run it over, or whatever. Like, we protect them from those natural consequences because we don't like the struggle. we live in a society of ease. And so any kind of struggle, we want to stop, we want to protect, we want it not to happen. It feels super uncomfortable to us. So we just don't step aside, and we thieve our children from really the lessons that they've earned through the choices that they've made. So natural consequences are wonderful, and positive consequences work far better than negative ones. They work better. So I know that negative is so natural because parents are always looking for leverage, always looking for a way that we can be in control of the situation. But what I would suggest a far better way is to use positive consequences to teach the child to be in control of the situation. So you put the responsibility squarely on the child's shoulders. But again, he's 4. So
Right.
sometimes that's difficult. And when they're that young, what I think is more important, what you should use your energy and your time for, rather than thinking like, how can I manipulate these consequences to make him learn to be afraid of doing what's wrong, we teach them all the things that we want them to do and what we'd like them to do. And then we practice it with them. And then if it doesn't work well, then we practice it again. I think too often we're like, oh, I taught him, like he should know by now. But remember, how many times do I mean, I'm 41 and I've probably been told 50 times, flossing is a good idea. We should floss, yeah, we should.
Right.
Now we're finally getting better at flossing, but it takes a long time for somebody to learn something. And that brain is just being built at 4 years old. Oh my goodness. It's like being built so quickly right now.
That's true.
Yeah. And it's our job to help those neurons to fire together and to wire together and to help them build that scaffolding so that they have a brain that loves to behave well.
Yeah, I feel like I'm as we're having this conversation, I'm like, maybe I have really unrealistic expectations. Like I am putting so much pressure on him to not have these outbursts or these tantrums, and he knows that's not acceptable. Why does he keep doing it? Mm-hmm. So I think that's you've already helped me see a shift in how to see my children.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we think, we forget the difference between can't and won't. Sometimes we think our children won't do it, like they're deliberately choosing not to. But especially for little ones, often they can't. Going back to little impulse control and executive function, a lot of the things that they're doing is based on that kind of Neanderthal brain, that base of their brain that's developed is fight or flight. And that's what they're using to make those impulsive decisions. And sometimes that can't even looks like they are tired or they've had a bad day. I mean, there's so many things I myself say, oh, I just can't today, and I give myself grace to do that. But do I give my child the same grace? I don't know that I do all the time. So, and remember that when they can't, it's usually because it's not developmentally appropriate for them, or they're having a human moment, or we haven't taught them how. We haven't effectively taught them how. Or, it's kind of on their genome. It's it's part of their temperament. And you can't really change that from a child. You can help them and channel it in a way that's more healthy and encourage them to use it for good. But we can't change that.
I love that. They do come out. They're like little rocks. You can chip away, but they're still their own little person with their own little personalities. So one thing I love that you said, and I have done this so many times, is if you do end up yelling, I love how you have a process. You're ask for forgiveness. Can you go over that? What if you do just lose it on your kids?
I think the first thing is to just take a deep breath and forgive yourself first. But then make sure that you ask for forgiveness from your child. I think that I can count on my hand how many times my parents have done that for me, but they were moments that I'll never forget, where my parents showed me their human side. And I'm so grateful for that, because it gives me hope that even though I haven't gotten things figured out yet, that it's okay. It's a lifelong journey. And that when you ask for forgiveness and you say, thank you for teaching me and I'm still learning, it makes you a team too. So one of the things that I love to share with people is there is great research behind one of the things that strongest families do really well. And you think, okay, well, they must be great communicators. Yes, they're great communicators. Oh, they must spend a lot of family time together. Yes, they do. But one of the best things that the strongest families do really well is they're just really good at repairing. They're really good at closing that loop and saying, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And they do. They just forgive each other and they move on, rather than holding it back and being angry and not taking fault. It's just such a healing thing to realize, wow, you're just like me, and we can do this together.
It's been a really beautiful experience. I did that with my daughter. I now make it a habit. Like if I lose it, I will always ask for forgiveness and apologize, because I remember, she will always forgive me. Like Olivia is always like, it's okay, Mom. And she'll always apologize too, which I think is cool because they are learning, you know? So she'll always say, I'm sorry too. I should have listened better, or I should have, I shouldn't have hit Jameson or whatever. And so we're both like coming together, and I'm like, I am so sorry. I'm going to try again harder tomorrow. I'm really sorry that I yelled today, and it's really cute to see that no matter how many times I mess up, she always forgives me. She's always like, it's okay, Mom. Like we can do it again tomorrow, like it's really, really cute. And it's also interesting to see how each child reacts, because Jameson he'll be in the middle of a tantrum and I'll be like, come here, Jameson, do you just need a snuggle? And he'll be like, yeah, I just need a snuggle, and then he'll be fine. He'll calm down in like 2 seconds. It's almost always, he just needs attention or love, or like to feel that, like he loves physical touch. But then Olivia is pretty stubborn. And if Olivia is angry and I'm like, come here, she'll be like, no, like she needs time.
Yes.
So I think also knowing like how they're going to react and not taking it personal either. Yeah. I've had to learn for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Learning how they feel love too. Such a unique thing for each child.
Yes. And you have a course on that, don't you? Like finding your child's love language?
Yeah. Yeah. We have so many free resources on my page that just help you to I just want to support parents as much as possible with anything, any ability that we have. So, yep, that's there to learn your child's love language. You just take a really quick quiz, because sometimes parents will say, well, I told him I really appreciated it and it embarrassed him. And it might be that that's not how they speak it. So write them a note, or make their bed, or scratch their back, or, bring them a stick of gum or something. Yeah. There's lots of different ways to express love. And I love that you know your children so well that you can communicate that to them. That's just a really great sign of an attached family. And it's important to remember that it's all about safety and how we communicate safety with our kids. One thing that's really interesting, you just said about how your daughter's so good at forgiving. When parents stay safe and they stay calm, there's this incredible thing that happens where children are just so much more likely to ask for forgiveness. And they'll do it in different ways. They'll give a treat, or they'll write a note, or they'll come and hug you, or they'll say they're sorry. And it's just that gap between where they've performed and where you're performing as a human, and they just really want to be like you. And because you're safe,
Yes, that just happened. Like, I was trying so hard this week to just be as patient as I could. And I did notice Olivia was being super mean one day. She just had an attitude. And then probably an hour later, she came back to me, and I stayed calm and I never got mad. And an hour later, she came back and she apologized and she said, Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to do that again. Like, I love you. And it was like, oh, like instead of me going back, like I just kind of kept my cool and I was really patient, which was so hard for me.
Yeah.
But then she came back and apologized and like changed it on her own,
Right. And that's like that's the best way for children to learn is when they teach themselves. And when a child comes to you and they apologize, they're teaching themselves, this is how I should behave. I should be like mom, or I should be like dad. It's such a powerful, and I'll teach this in workshops or whatever. And I'll be like, if you're safe, your child will come to you and apologize. And parents are so dubious about this. Like, there's no way that they're going to come and apologize to me. And I will get messages like, it's magic, Ralphie. It's magic.
It really is.
Yeah, it's magic for them to see where you are, where they're performing, and they want to be like you. And you're a safe place to go to and say, will you still accept me even though I'm where I am? And of course you will, right? We always do. Right. It's such a magical way and that connection. Oh, I just love it when I hear experiences like that.
Wow. Well, you've made such a difference in my life and my family's life and helping me to be a more confident parent. So I just want to thank you for that. And do you know where, or can you tell our listeners where they can find you and your resources?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Instagram at Simply on Purpose, and my website is simplyonpurpose.org. I have an audio course that's kind of our flagship. It's the foundation. I teach live workshops, and we're going to hopefully start those in June again, and those are across the country. I just have so many free resources. I have a free email course called the Stay Safe series. It teaches you why you shouldn't yell, why it doesn't work, and what to do instead. So that's a really good resource for parents. Just come and hang out with me, and we'll get through this together.
Yeah, I don't know how you come up with so much content. She's just a wealth of knowledge. So go follow her, check out her website. Thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it, Ralphie.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. If you liked the content and want to hear more, remember to hit that subscribe button and write a review. As a small business owner, I appreciate it more than you know. If you are looking for a program to help with self-confidence, to lose weight, get in shape, and work on your mental, physical, and emotional health, check out my training programs on www.bodybybree.com. My team and I help to hold you accountable through the Body by Bree app, where you log in to see all your workouts, custom meal plan made specifically for you and your needs, and communication through the messenger. You are never alone when you're on the Body by Bree training program. Click the link in the show notes to get more information on how to transform your life from the inside out.